لا حول ولا قوة إلا بالله العلي العظيم الحمد لله رب العالمين وصلى الله على سيدنا ونبينا أبي القاسم المصطفى محمد وعلى آله الطيبين الطاهرين لا سيما بقية الله في الأراضين عجل الله تعالى فرجه الشريف. Our hadith today about knowledge is narrated from Imam Askari alayhi salam, and Imam Askari quotes Imam Baqir alayhi salam. So the 11th Imam quotes the 5th Imam. Al-alim kaman ma'ahu sham'atun tudhi'u lin-nas. The example of an alim, learned person, is the example of a candle. A person who is carrying a candle, and this candle gives light, illuminates for people. So you are carrying a candle and giving light to people. فَكُلُّ مَنْ أَبْصَرَ شَمْعَتَهُ دَعَى لَهُ بِخَيْرٍ. Everyone who benefits from this candle prays for this alim. You know, if you are in darkness and then a person is carrying a torch or a candle, you say, thank you. May Allah, bless you. So everyone who benefits from this prays for him. كَذَلِكَ الْعَالِمُ مَعَ شَمْعَةٍ تُزِيلُ ظُلْمَةَ الْجَهْلِ وَالْحَيْرَةِ. Alim is, the scholar is also carrying a candle by which he removes the darkness of ignorance and confusion. Jahl is ignorance. Hayra is confusion. Sometimes people don't know something, their mind is empty. Sometimes they are confused. They have heard conflicting ideas, so they don't know what to believe. فَكُلُّ مَنْ أَضَاءَتْ لَهُ فَخَرَجَ بِهَا مِنْ حَيْرَةٍ أَوْ نَجَى بِهَا مِنْ جَهْلٍ فَهُوَ مِنْ عُتَقَائِهِ مِنَ النَّارِ. Everyone that this alim has given him light and therefore has gone out of confusion or has been saved from ignorance would be among the people who are freed from hellfire by this person. Sometimes you free a slave, which is very important, very highly recommended. When there was a slavery, Islam very much recommended to free slaves. But sometimes a person is supposed to go to hell eternally. To free such people is much more important, because eternal suffering. So every person that has benefited from the light of this alim would be among the people who are freed by him from hellfire. Utaqa. Utaqa means those who are released, freed. Wallahu yu'awwidhuhu an dhalika bikulli sha'ratin liman a'taqahu ma huwa afdalu lahu min as-sadaqah bi-mi'ati alf qintar. If you want to give a figure, if you want to measure the reward that Allah gives this person with worldly affairs, you cannot. You cannot say how much is the value of the reward of this person. You say, 1 million, 1 billion, 1 trillion. No. Imam alayhi salam says, Allah gives him, to show that how magnificent is the reward, Allah gives him in the place of every piece of hair of every person that he has freed from hell, what is better for him than giving sadaqah 100,000 qintar, 100,000, like parcel, pack. They used to have, sometimes something from, maybe for example, a stomach of animal or a skin of animal to use for carrying, coins and jewelries. Okay, like the skin of a goat, for example, or skin of a cow. So the reward is more than 100,000 qintar for every piece of hair of everyone that he has freed. It means that you cannot measure it by numbers. And Imam says this is something that also you have to remember, that sometimes you give sadaqah and sadaqah might not be in the best way that Allah wants. Sometimes you give sadaqah and then that person becomes lazy. Sometimes you give sadaqah and maybe there is something more important than this. So there are many ways that a sadaqah might not be in the most appropriate way. But this is free from all these problems. In sadaqah, there can be lots of difficulties. So you have to make sure that sadaqah is done in an appropriate way, proper intention, everything. But for this, it's clear and straightforward. So Imam says, instead of talking about sadaqah, he says we can say, لكن يعطيه الله ما هو أفضل من 100,000 ركعة بين يدي الكعبة. Allah gives him what is better than 100,000 rak'ah salat next to Kaaba. So can you compare the reward of a person who is teaching and guiding to a person who is giving sadaqah or a person who is praying? It's not comparable. This shows how much Islam puts emphasis on social work. Something that you do for the sake of others, for the sake of community, for helping others, not just helping yourself. Of course, you have to help yourself, but then you have to also help other people. If I forget myself, my piety, my spirituality, I cannot even help other people. But I cannot only be concerned about myself. Part of my self-purification and upliftment is to do my social responsibilities. Sometimes I use this example. Those who had self-knowledge, here with me, so they might remember this example. When you travel by plane, they give you some security instructions. One of the things they say is that in the case of emergencies, so first you should put oxygen mask on yourself and then try to help other people. Yeah? If you want to first put the mask on someone else, there is a chance that in this process you would die. But if you put mask on yourself, then you can help the other person in a better way. So this is about spirituality also. You have to protect yourself, but also be attentive to other people. But if I forget myself and become too busy with social responsibilities and forget myself, then that's not working. Inshallah, tomorrow we will have another hadith about knowledge. Now we go back to our discussion about human beings. So we are in unit 3 of the book. One of the things that philosophers and psychologists and biologists all agree is that still human beings are not completely known. Although we ourselves are human beings, but still there are many, many things, Assalamu alaikum, that we don't know about ourselves. Even one of the writers has written a book, and he has called the book Human Beings Are Unknown Beings. There are many, many things that we don't know about ourselves. What makes human beings very special is not only their body. Of course, even our body is very magnificent. And biologists, medical doctors, they still don't know many things about our body. Indeed, the more you know, the more questions you have. You know, nowadays, we know more about different types of diseases. And in the past, you know, the scientists didn't have that much questions that we have today. But the psychological, mental, spiritual aspects are even more unknown to us. We know very, very little. You know, as Allah says in the Quran, وَمَا أُوتِيتُم مِّنَ الْعِلْمِ إِلَّا قَلِيلًا. You have been given very little knowledge. It is true that our capacity for learning is unlimited. Yeah? When Allah wanted to prove to the angels why it was right to appoint Adam as his vicegerent, Allah says, وَعَلَّمَ آدَمَ الْأَسْمَاءَ كُلَّهَا. So there is such a capacity that man can be taught all the names, which means all the facts. But this is a potentiality. Most of human beings, they don't know even maybe 1 in billion of what they can know. So, the amount of knowledge that we actually have is very limited. Especially when it comes to human beings. What we want to do here is to mention some evidence to prove that human beings are not just a physical, biological being. We have our spirit or soul. Here, I use soul and spirit in the same way. Sometimes we use different way, but here I use the same way. As I think it's the way that the Quran has used nafs and ruh for human beings the same. Sometimes we use them in different ways, but here we use them in the same way. So human soul and spirit, we use them in the same way. There are some evidence that we want to talk about to say that we are not just a physical, biological object. We have soul, which is immaterial. One of the beautiful experiences of human beings is to have dreams. If we didn't have dreams, we were not able to understand many, many things. One of the best ways to get a little exposure to the spiritual world, to the world of spirits, is dream. Some people think that they never have had dreams. They have never had dreams. But scientists say that every person has dreams, but sometimes we don't remember our dreams. If you wake up while you are dreaming or shortly after that, you may remember, but sometimes you don't remember. But everyone has a kind of dream. And when you dream, there are two general possibilities. This is the way I put it. It's not in the book. Sometimes you just review the images that you have in your archive. During your life, you have been to different places, have met different people. Okay? There is an archive. Nothing is forgotten. Maybe you don't remember, you cannot, recall, but everything is saved in the storeroom, in the archive. Sometimes when you dream, your mind is going to the archive and brings out some of those images. Either uses them in the same way that you experience them, or even mixes them up. So maybe when you were awake, you never saw any person with two heads. But in your dream, the mind can use some fantasy and make them, together. For example, a person with two heads. These type of dreams are important, but not that significant, not that important, because they are not giving you any new information. Many times, because you have been very much concerned about something, you may dream. Or for example, if you had eaten too much, you may have bad dreams. Yeah? So this is not giving you anything important. But sometimes the soul is not just going to the archive. The soul is ascending to the world of spirits, to Malakut, to the kingdom of Allah, and knows of some realities that never were known to us when we were awake. This is true dream. This is Roya Sadiqah. This is important. I am sure all of you have had such experiences, or at least people that you know have had such experiences, that sometimes you dream of something and you didn't have any clue about this. Then you see it happens. Or people have had dreams of places that they never went, and when they go, they find it exactly as they saw in their dream. Or dream of people that they haven't met, and then they go and meet them. So the only way to explain this is to accept that there is something more than our body, more than our physical brain, because we haven't had such things through our brain. We haven't had such experience through our body. I haven't seen anything like this by my eyes, or didn't hear anything like this by my ears. It has not yet happened, for example, or it has happened in another part of the world. I had not been there. It's only through my soul being connected to some higher levels of reality in which everything is registered and everything is represented that I can know about this. Like, for example, sometimes you go to a place and watch that place. Sometimes there is a film of that place in a library, and they make it available to you. So you see that clip, that film, and you come to know about that place. So everything which is in this world is somehow registered in divine tablets, alwah. There are plates, there are tablets in which everything is registered. Inshallah, we'll talk about this later. So you can get access to them and see everything. Of course, most of us only have rare experiences, but there are people who are very good in this. There are people who have frequent true dreams. They see many, many things in their dream. But for many people, this is rare. Even in the Quran, we have very important examples of dreams. For example, the dream of Pharaoh. He had dreamed that one of the Bani Israel is going to defeat him. And to avoid that, he wanted to kill all the sons of Bani Israel. Inshallah, we'll talk about this beautiful story later. Or the dream of people in the time of Prophet Yusuf, those prisoners who had dream, then Pharaoh's dream was interpreted by Prophet Yusuf. The dream of the Prophet Ibrahim, he said to his son Ismail, "Inni ara fil manam anni azbahuk." He had a repeated dream that he's slaughtering Ismail. So one reality which is very important is dream, true dreams. Another thing is telepathy. There are experiences that some people are able to communicate in distance from a very remote place to another person without using mobile or internet or anything. Sometimes they understand what is happening to another person in another part of the world. Sometimes they send message to each other. A simple example is something that you may have yourself experienced, but there are people who are very good in this, very strong in this. Simple example is like sometimes mother and children. Mother is maybe in one country and the child is another country. But many times this has happened, that as soon as the child has a trouble and difficulty, mother feels that. If the child, for example, is ill or has accident, mother in another part of the world feels that. Or those, for example, who are twins, sometimes they have this also connection. They know what is going on in the mind of the other person. There is no way to explain this physically, because physically they are disconnected. The souls are connected. Another thing is the experience of being in touch with the souls of the dead people. This is not mentioned in the book. Maybe you can write this. Sometimes there have been people who have had encounter with the dead people. Of course, there are also some liars who cheat, but we are talking about reliable people. In the book Self-Knowledge, I have one chapter about the spirit. You can read some of the arguments and stories there. For example, the brother of Allama Tabatabai, rahmatullah alayh, he was himself a very respected alim. They studied together in Najaf. The late Elahi, he was known as Elahi. He was very special, very pious. And sometimes he had encounter with the souls of the dead people. Sometimes directly, sometimes through one of his students. He had a student who was able to facilitate his conversation with the spirit of great philosophers. And the student himself was not understanding what he is passing on to this great scholar. Through him, messages were sent and received, and he himself was not understanding completely. But a story that very much drew my attention is the story that I heard myself from Ayatollah Hassanzadeh Amuli about the brother of Allama Tabatabai. Ayatollah Hassanzadeh Amuli, who is one of our living ulama, he says that when I was much younger, in my middle ages, I used to go to my own town in northern Iran in summer and give few lessons to students. One day after giving several lessons, I went home, and after lunch I wanted to have some rest. But my children made lots of noise, and I was, not able to have any rest. So I told them, please keep quiet. But they didn't pay attention, so they made noise. So after several times, then I was angry with them. And I shouted. When I shouted at them, then I felt a kind of darkness in my heart. So I went to them and tried to make them happy. It didn't work. I went outside and bought something for them to make them happy. It didn't work. So I decided to go and see my teacher, the brother of Allama Tabatabai, in another town. So, and he didn't have, his own car, so he had to use public, transportation to go from Amul to Tehran and then perhaps to Qom. I don't know where was the brother of Allama at that time. Anyway, he had to travel because he felt this darkness is not going away. And this shows, how much control they have and how much they monitor themselves. Yeah, that even one bad, action can affect them in the way that they feel. If your dress is completely white, even a little black spot can be seen. But if it's, black all the way, you don't feel anything. Those who haven't smoked, even, one time of smoking makes them cough. But if you are used to a smoke, you don't feel anything. So, he says, I went and reached the door of the house of the brother of Allama Tabatabai, knocked the door, and he came out. After exchange of salam, without me telling him the story, I didn't say anything. He said, I had a conversation with Ayatollah Sayyid Ali Qadhi Tabatabai, who was the teacher of Allama Tabatabai and his brother and Ayatollah Bahjat and many people, and had died many years ago. He said, I had conversation with him, and he told me, Agha Hassanzadeh, who is not able to control his anger, how does he expect to reach high levels? So he said, I was shocked. How he knew about this? How did he have conversation about a person who has passed away many years ago? This cannot be explained by laws of the physics. Or another story is that once the brother of Allama Tabatabai sent him a message that our father is not happy with you. The father had passed away. But he said, our father is not happy with you because you didn't share the sawab, the reward of writing Al-Mizan with him. When you were writing Al-Mizan, you didn't make the intention of part of sawab going to my father. When Allama received this message, he was surprised because no one knew what was his intention. And Allama said, I didn't make the intention of sharing sawab with him because I thought my work is not significant. Such a humble person, he has written the best tafsir of Quran, but he doesn't think that there is any reward. So he immediately made the intention of sharing the reward with his father. Then he received another message from his brother that our father is now happy with you. And there are many stories. I mentioned in the book Self-Knowledge a story of the late Sayyid Jalaluddin Ashtiyani, who was a great alim in Mashhad in the field of philosophy and mysticism. How in dream he was informed about some couplets of Masnavi by Jalaluddin Mawlavi Rumi that were not available in any copies in Iran. And after some years, a person found an old manuscript in another country. And when he received a copy of that, he realized that those couplets that he had in dream are available in that copy. How can you explain this? So there are many empirical, psychological evidence for proving the immateriality of the soul. And in addition to that, philosophers have also developed some arguments. In the book, there is one argument. And that is the argument based on constancy of our personality. You know, every material thing goes through changes. Maybe you don't notice, but everything is changing. Everything in this material world. When it comes to human body, it's very clear. In every 6 years, all our cells are replaced except the cells in the nervous system, which just die. They're not replaced. But all other cells are replaced. So the hand that you have now is not the one that you had 30 years ago, 20 years ago. They're all replaced. Or we become, for example, older. We get lots of experiences. We go through difficulties. But still, we are 100% sure that we are the same person. Even if you are 100 years old, you are the same person that was there when, for example, you were going to primary school or to a kindergarten. The same person. How can you explain this sameness? This can only be explained by referring to something which must be common all the way through. Something which is not affected by the passage of time. And that is human spirit, which is immaterial. It's not changing. I'm not saying it's not changing in the sense that it doesn't have the potential of becoming more perfect. I mean, it's not changing in the same of being replaced in the sense of being a second person. If it changes in some qualities, not in identity. If even today, after thousands of years, a person returns to this dunya, as we believe about Raj'ah, the idea of the return, or those people that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says in the Quran that they experience this, like the people who were revived by Prophet Isa alayhi salam, or the story that Allah says, "O kalladhi marra ala qaryatin wa hiya khawiyatun ala urushaha." You know, one of the people, some people say maybe Uzair, he was passing by a village and saw that everyone is dead. So he said, "Anna yuhyi Allahu hadhihi ba'da mawtaha." How is Allah going to revive? He didn't deny. The question was how this is going to happen. فَأَمَاتَهُ اللَّهُ مِئَةَ عَامٍ ثُمَّ بَعْثَهُ. Allah made him die for 100 years. Or the story of, for example, the people of the cave. Still, they are the same person, the same people. No matter how many years have passed. Philosophers also have used arguments based on knowledge. our knowledge is not changing. So our knowledge must be immaterial, and therefore the spirit, which is the holder of knowledge, must be immaterial. Or they have used argument of not being divided. This is also beautiful. I don't want to mention all the arguments, but I mentioned this one more argument. You know, anything which is material can be divided. Your body can be divided. You can say, for example, top of my body, or right side, or left, front, back. But our soul or spirit cannot be divided. You cannot say top of my soul or left side of my soul. The soul is one simple entity. And even if you lose parts of your body, your soul is not lost. You know, for example, imagine if, God forbid, you lose both hands in an accident. Is yourself reduced? So you are a lesser person than what you used to be? Or you are still the same person? You are the same person. If in addition to your hands, your legs are also lost, the same. You are the same person. And something very interesting that nowadays many scientists are working on this is about near-death experiences. And I am not saying that we believe everything that they say, you know, because sometimes people maybe exaggerate, maybe they are not, you know, accurate, or maybe they fabricate things, you know. But there are many, many cases that they have said that when they were very near to death, but for some reason they returned, they experienced the soul being able to watch body. For example, in the book there is a mention of a scientist who has written on this. And for example, there's a story that a person was going to die because of accident. Then he says, I saw doctors are doing some surgery and operation on my body. But then he came back. How can you explain this? Even some mystics have had this experience. I have mentioned in the book Self-Knowledge a story of Ayatollah Mirza Jawad Agha, Tehrani, who was in Mashhad. I met him in Mashhad before he passed away. He was a very old person when we met him, very pious. He has many books. One book was to refute Marxism. Marxists were materialists. So, to refute their ideas, which was to deny immaterial soul, he mentioned one story about himself, because such people, they don't want to say these things about themselves. But he mentioned this for this purpose. He said, I myself have seen my body. Your soul comes out of your body and you can see your body. Unfortunately, for most of us, maybe 99% of us, or 99.99% of us, we think that we are this body because we have always been used to see ourselves in the form of this body. I think this is me. But this is not me. This is like a dress. This is like a cage. This is like a prison for the soul. It's not the soul. But because we have always been with this body, we cannot think of a life without this body, a reality without this body. This is why some people like Ibn Sina have developed an argument which is interesting. It's the argument of suspended man. Ibn Sina says that imagine you are in a situation in which there is nothing to distract you. Suppose no light, no high temperature or low temperature. Because if it is too cold, you feel. If it is too hot, you feel. You are not hungry or thirsty, or you are not too full, so that again you feel. No noise, nothing. And you are like, suspended in the air. So you don't feel anything like a chair or, anything like dress. So nothing from environment is distracting you. Ibn Sina says, at that time that you have no feeling of your body and environment, do you still have an understanding of yourself or not? For sure you have an understanding of yourself. You say, I. This must be different from your body. So this is why you see that in Islam, in Christianity, in many religions, they all believe in human beings having a soul or a spirit more than body, not just body. And our identity is established by that soul. You can, for example, do plastic surgery, but you are the same person. Yeah? If someone does plastic surgery, he's the same person. You can be white and make yourself black, or be black and make your skin white, but you are the same person. You can be 50 kilograms and become, 200 kilograms, or opposite, but you are the same person. Or if you clone someone, still they would be two persons, not one person. Sometimes people think that if we clone someone, the second person would be the same person. It's not the same person. Even there can be many differences in their behavior, in their akhlaq. But even if their akhlaq is the same, still there are two people, two persons. So body is not deciding who am I. It's my soul. So this is very important fundamental issue that we have to establish. The next issue in the book is about theory of evolution. And I give you a little introduction to this, then we'll have a break, then we continue, inshallah. Charles Darwin had this experience of traveling by ship to some remote places. He has spent 5 years studying different types of species, animals, plants. And he then developed this idea that all living beings, whether they are animals or birds or plants, they all come from the same original or same initial being, which was very simple. And then it went through an evolutionary process, and then we have different types of beings now. In particular, he had the idea that human beings are results of evolution or transformation in an evolutionary way of some apes. So we have common ancestors with some apes. He himself was not an atheist. He didn't say this shows that God doesn't exist. He himself was a believer in God. He was a Christian. He had also before that some training, I think, to become a priest. But some people found this interesting, and then they decided to use it as an argument against God. Because they said God is believed by the people who believe in God to be the intelligent designer. If design is caused by evolution, so we don't need intelligent designer. So they think that either you believe in God or you believe in evolution. If you believe in evolution, you don't believe in God. وآخر دعوانا أن الحمد لله رب العالمين.